All right, now, everybody. Quiet, listen to me. We're going to start a show. Now, some of you people have been with me before. You know it's going to be a tough grind, but we're going to have a show.
And what up, party people? It is our big Thursday show. Thank you. Yeah, I'm psyched. Got a lot of stuff going on. My God, we're really on the doorstep of a government shutdown. I'll talk a little bit about what that might mean. What insanity rules our government. And yes, Rudy is in the news. It's part of that new book from Cassidy Hutchinson. We'll talk a bit about that. Albert is here, everyone. It's
Albert,
a rare Thursday appearance for Albert. And Commissioner, Niners play tonight. Short week. They play
short week, short work. It'll be easy. Easy win.
It's a damaged Giants team. They've lost maybe the best runner in the league, or one of them, right?
Yeah, Saquon Barkley's injured. He's out, so... And the Giants
also, they have some
necessarily
defensive
been
injuries,
well.
I think they've got some real issues, yeah. That's what Kim tells me.
Kim, how are you?
Yes, Kim and I had a weird night.
Yeah, we did.
I'm trying to text her all night, like with stuff about the show, and she's MIA. Thinking, I don't know what's going on, but I'm imagining... she's like, Mark, leave me alone. And can't you tell you sent me 11 text messages and I haven't responded? What do you think that means? And I don't know what it means.
Do you want to know what it means?
I do. I'm asking.
It means I sat down in a chair to do my Mark Thompson show work and my after party work, and I fell asleep. It was gone.
I see. All right.
I was
then
like
that's
right after 8
Wow,
o'clock, and I was a goner, and I didn't wake up until 6 o'clock this morning. I had a great sleep.
Oh
but
my
yeah,
God, I'd love a sleep like that.
it was totally accidental because I had intended on this is my work moment, and my body was like, no, actually, this is your sleep moment. And I'm like, all right, well,
there you have it. So that's, at least I don't need to take it personally.
No. So then I woke up at 6 o'clock this morning. I saw your text. I picked the topic that I liked the best, and off we went.
I love it. Well, it all worked out. All's well that ends well. All's well that ends well.
This
Albert,
is how Rudy
I ask
Giuliani
you,
ended up as the
all's
picture
well
for
that
today's show.
ends well. From what is that taken? It's a famous quote. All's well that ends well. Who wrote it? Who wrote All's Well That Ends Well? I ask you, the commissioner of sports, the producer of this show, the great Albert. Albert, who wrote All's Well That Ends Well?
Albert, thank you.
Do I have any lifelines here, Mark?
You what?
Do I have any lifelines here?
Don't use me. I don't know.
That's the audience.
You can ask the
maybe
audience.
I can hit the comment section. Maybe no, I won't do that. I'll just.
You can look in the chat. There has been a correct answer.
Yeah.
Here are some of the answers. This would be multiple choice. Three Musketeers.
I saw
Shakespeare.
Ben Franklin. I doubt it's Ben Franklin. It doesn't sound like a Ben Franklin.
Yogi Berra is one of the. Mark Twain says Mike. So, all's well that ends well. The correct answer is Shakespeare. That's right, everyone. You got Shakespeare. Yeah.
There's never been anything like this.
Yeah, he wrote a bunch of stuff. So,
starting the show with a pop quiz.
It was a quick thing. I mean, I meant that,
Yeah.
By the way, I've gotten some
on Thursday?
emails. What's that?
Is this what happens on Thursdays? Penny on his toes.
Watch out.
Look, I got a government shutdown. I have major news out of the Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. He was really asked some pretty tough questions. I'll get to that in a little while. I've got free COVID testing that I will tell you about. It's going back out. If I have time, I will tell you about Nazi-related stolen art that is finally being returned to the ancestors of those killed in the Holocaust. That's kind of an upbeat. But I mean, I know the Holocaust is not up.
Doesn't really sound upbeat.
But the fact that they finally are, clawing back this stolen art. But speaking of Nazis, there is book burning going on at an insane rate here in America. Land of the free, home of the brave, and, of course, the place where we burn books. So the big thing I'm looking forward to, among other things, is David Katz. In the second hour, we'll talk about many of the legal travails that Giuliani's had to go through. There's been a major, major decision on the part of the Biden administration about Venezuelans seeking immigration status as asylees. They're asylum seekers, and they come here to get away from Venezuela, this brutal regime. And this administration just granted working visas and accepting close to 500,000 of these Venezuelans. And the funniest thing I heard about this, and then we'll go on to other stuff, but the funniest thing I heard about this was the right-wingers saying, they're a bunch of communists. Venezuela's a communist country, and they're coming in here, and this is what the Biden administration is doing. They're letting in all of these communists. Dude, they're fleeing communism. You see? That's why they're asking for asylum. That's why they grabbed what meager possessions they could and came here. They're fleeing communism. It's the stupidest thing I've heard. And believe me, in the stupid sweepstakes, there's a lot of competition. So we'll talk to David Katz a little about the legal status of all of that.
The Mark Thompson Show.
But the big news of the day is maybe you can rally a picture of this guy, Albert. Matt Walsh. Matt Walsh, the comedian and actor, announcing that he will not be on Dancing with the Stars as he said he would. Yes. There he is in his Dancing with the Stars publicity picture. Now, hopefully his partner, now he's taking a pause from it because of solidarity that he wants to maintain with Hollywood strikers. But the idea
maybe he should
is,
just use the platform to, help out his fellow. He could just stay on the show, because now I'm not going to watch. Matt Walsh isn't on the show. I'm probably not going to watch anymore.
Does anybody even know who he is? Like, have you known?
How dare you, Kim?
Kim, how are you?
Oh,
Dancing with the Stars is like, are they really stars? Who are these people?
Oh my God. These are our cherished celebrities. Kim, how dare you? See, does anybody really know who he is?
Kim, how are you?
And
I'm just saying.
His partner, though, she'll still be on. She's rather his dance partner, Albert.
I'd hope so, as a representative of the Asian community and the Asian American community.
She is a very attractive, talented Asian performer, and I hope she'll still be on the show.
And I wanted to apologize to the Asian community, the Asian American community.
Yes. Well, we apologize in advance to the Asian American community and the Asian community. But Matt Walsh, there he is. He says, in solidarity with the SAG-AFTRA strike and the WGA. It's really the WGA that he is concerned with. Those are the writers, right? Writers Guild of America.
Yeah.
He said, I was excited to join the show and did so under the impression that it was not a WGA show. Fell under a different agreement. This morning, when I was informed by my union, the WGA, that is considered struck work, I walked out of my rehearsal. Oh. Wow. I've been and always will be with my union members of the WGA, SAG, and DGA. So there it is. Meantime, they may have to pause Dancing with the Stars.
Are these all the people that are on the show? Yeah.
Yeah, yes. These are all the people that... You know who Adrian Peterson is?
No.
Albert, do you want to tell her you are the commissioner?
Yeah, he's one of the greatest running backs to play in the NFL.
Okay. Yeah.
And then the last one, Jamie Lynn Spears here in the bottom. I pre-checked this list, so we got a Spears sister in
very, very nice. Yeah.
Cast.
I like go up for a second. I like
see if it was Dancing with the Stars, Brittany would be on.
No,
it's Dancing
Mira
with the
Sorvino
Stars
is a
sister.
major star.
Yeah,
Kim.
that's
How
true.
dare
They
you?
have to have one in order to make the name stick. They have to have at least one or two of like, you know who they are. The rest of them are like, it's a crapshoot.
I'll grant you that not everybody is A-list. I will grant you that. But I think that there's like Tyson Beckford, you know.
I do.
You know. So anyway, I don't know what the future of the show is, given the fact that, you know, there are people who are striking it, like Matt Walsh. But it does actually bring attention to the, and I'll say to the show. I'll also say this: there was word late last night that there was in the WGA strike, there was some thawing of relations between the two sides, and that the top people were coming to the bargaining table today, and that word was released in a joint statement. Whenever you see a joint statement, you know, that is signed on to essentially by both the WGA and the studios, it's a little bit maybe encouraging. So I'm hoping that they reach some kind of agreement soon, and that you know, they can get back to work. There are a lot of people who count on that industry for a livelihood. So,
The Mark Thompson Show.
Well, shall we do the Giuliani thing or the government shutdown thing first? What would you like to do? Kim, I'll leave it to you.
Giuliani or government shutdown?
Yeah.
Giuliani.
Giuliani is creepy.
Yeah.
Government
Giuliani.
shutdown is scary. You want creepy or scary?
Just do Giuliani first.
All right, Giuliani first.
What he's got going here is a situation.
He does. Albert, do you have the piece on Giuliani?
Former
here's
Trump
a little.
aide Cassidy Hutchinson, who became a key witness in
Stop for a second,
January
Albert.
6th
I've
hearing.
received emails about the fact, and there's very little we can do about
I've received a lot of positive letters.
that. The levels, the audio levels on some of this stuff are not loud enough. So like when you run a roll in, it's not always this way, but it's sometimes this way. So far, there's not much we can do about that. So sorry about that. I'll lay out of this so that you don't have to adjust up and down your volume level. And hopefully you can hear this report on Giuliani. Look, the other thing I don't like that I can't do anything about is the fact that I look like ghost-like. I look cadaverous. If you look at my skin, I look so white. Now, it is true that I do have considerable reflectivity in my skin. I'm saying that I'd
fake.
like to be.
That's real.
I'd like to be dark and handsome, to be honest. Instead, I'm pasty white. But I'm not as pasty white quite as I appear on camera. There's nothing I can do about that either. So I'm just saying we all have our stuff. Our audio thing we'll work on, but for now, I'll lay out.
You know, they do this to me all the time. I don't know what the hell they do it for.
I'll lay out, and you'll be. This is Rudy Giuliani, and essentially revelations that come out of this new book.
Former Trump aide Cassidy Hutchinson, who became a key witness in congressional January 6th hearings, now says Trump's former lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, groped her on the very same day as the assault on the Capitol. It's in a published excerpt from her new memoir. Hutchinson says the former mayor put his hand under her skirt, something that a Giuliani spokesperson denies. Adriana Diaz is here with more on this. Quite a claim. Good morning.
It is quite a claim. Good morning. Hutchinson wrote that on January 6th, Giuliani was smiling like a Cheshire cat and waving a stack of documents, telling her, quote, "We have the evidence. It's all here. We're going to pull this off." That was before he allegedly groped her.
We will never give up. We will never concede.
It was backstage at this speech on the day of the Capitol insurrection that Cassidy Hutchinson says former President Trump's lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, groped her. In an excerpt from Hutchinson's new book, obtained by The Guardian, she wrote of Giuliani, "Rudy wraps one arm around my body, closing the space that was separating us. I lower my eyes and watch his free hand reach for the hem of my blazer. By the way," he says, fingering the fabric, "I'm loving this leather jacket on you." His hand slips under my blazer, then my skirt. I fight against the tension in my muscles and recoil from Rudy's grip. Giuliani denied the allegations during an interview with Newsmax's Eric Boiling.
First, I'm not going to grope somebody at all. False, totally absurd.
Giuliani spokesman Ted Goodman told CBS News these allegations are false.
Really, it felt personal. I was really sad.
That was Hutchinson last year, testifying to Congress about her disgust with the January 6th attack.
We were watching the Capitol building get defaced over a lie.
It's a lie that Giuliani has fueled by making false claims of election fraud.
I'm willing to stake my reputation. The president is willing to stake his reputation on the fact that we're going to find criminality there.
Giuliani has since been indicted in Georgia for his alleged role in conspiring to illegally reverse the 2020 election results and pleaded not guilty to 13 charges against him there. As for Hutchinson's claims, they're not the first of their kind against the former New York City mayor. In May, a woman claiming to have been a former employee of Giuliani's filed a $10 million lawsuit accusing him of sexual assault, harassment, and wage theft. Giuliani has denied those allegations.
That's good, Albert. Thank you. I have just a couple of thoughts on this. First of all, I'm glad that they threw in that Noel Dunphy case at the end, because that really is a far more, I don't know, I don't want me to pick between sexual harassment, which one is far more offensive. It's all offensive, but it's really pretty gross what she alleges in that lawsuit. And then she also alleges, as you're aware, of the withholding of compensation. So that suit continues. So all I would say is, and I'm hearing and seeing in the chat, how come she didn't smack him? How come she didn't scream? The only thing I will say, if you're wondering about whether or not it's true, and there's no way for us to say whether it's true, of course, and it is part of some of the salacious material that would be released in a book. They're always wanting you to release the hot stuff to help juice sales. It is on brand for Rudy Giuliani. I mean, it's not a stretch to get to this place where he did this thing. In other words, he's kind of, the mayor of Creep City. And so for him to do something creepy, I think that's, again, very much consistent with his profile. So
I was struck in this account that Cassidy Hutchinson details that John Eastman, one of the president's other lawyers, she looks up and he's like leering at this whole situation as it unfolds. So he's like, enjoying what's happening to her too. The whole thing is, she talks about his jaundiced eyes, Giuliani's jaundiced yellowish eye. I mean, the whole thing is icky, that she would have to go through that.
It's gross and it's specific. And as you say, she references others who were at least in the vicinity. And again, all of these things that were happening within that rugby scrum of Trump devotees and, that coterie of people that was all about Trump and would carry Trump's water anywhere. And Giuliani was really heading that parade. This is on brand for them, It really is. So anyway, that's the deal on Rudy. He's headlining there, but as you know, he's got his own legal problems. They mentioned a couple of his legal problems there in that report, but I'll also remember for you that last week we told you he's being sued by his lawyers because he's not paying bills. And so that's upwards of $1 million. So good luck finding a lawyer to sue her for defamation. You don't pay lawyers and you're out of money. And so Rudy Giuliani, who, as you know, I've never been a fan of, and I have told you, we talked about it yesterday, that whole, America's mayor crap was crap, and he's been dining out on it for years, and finally, it's catching up to him. He is a power-hungry, attention-hungry creep, and he's finally getting called out for that.
The Mark Thompson Show.
The government may shut down. That's right. I think it very possible. I don't see how they possibly put the coalition together to stop this from happening. You've only got another week and a half? Now, there's so many different ramifications to a government shutdown. The kinds of things that are affected go from seniors getting checks. Now, if you're already a senior who are getting a check, you'll still get it. But if you're new into the system, you're getting a Social Security check I'm talking about, you will not be processed. anybody who is just now being processed, everything shuts down. This is an across-the-board shutdown. Law enforcement and military will still work by law, but they won't be paid. I mean, they'll be paid back pay when ultimately the government reopens. But meantime, they'll be working without pay, and they'll be the only ones working. And the temporary funding measure, that didn't go through. This House Freedom Caucus is, they wanted to cut all of these different, we call them entitlement programs. So that was, DOA. Now, if the government shuts down, you'll see EPA shut down. You'll see USDA shut down. The inspection of meat and food, that'll all stop.
Are you saying the food won't be inspected while the
Correct.
shutdown is?
That's right.
So it's not like they have to keep working and they get paid later. They stop doing what they're doing?
Exactly.
Well, that's
the federal
scary.
government must stop all non-essential functions until funding is approved by Congress and signed into law.
So food safety is not an essential function?
No. I mean,
Okay.
you can argue across the board. There are a bunch of things that are essential functions. Water safety. Water is tested also. There are a bunch of EPA things related to things we put in our body, food, water. They'll all go away and stop. Of course, national parks will close passport processing. That's going to stop. The hiring of new government employees, research at NIH, all that could stop. All the interaction between constituents and Congress people, that will all stop. The Postal Service. I mentioned to you Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. Now, the Postal Service shouldn't shut down because it's funded through a permanent appropriation that doesn't need renewal. And I think you'll check this, Albert. And I feel like Medicare and Medicaid also.
Google it.
Yeah. But it will, I know, as I say, and I was mentioning, if you're new to Medicare and Medicaid, if your stuff is just being processed, that will stop. If you're already in the system, you'll be okay. The last government shutdown stretched from the 2018 month of December until January of 2019. The 5-week partial shutdown then cost the economy $11 billion. That was according to a Congressional Budget Office report. A permanent loss of about $3 billion. Businesses across the country that relied on government customers reported a slowdown in business. Some said they had to lay off employees. Tens of thousands of immigration court hearings canceled. Government contractors struggled to pay bills. That was because Trump, remember, he wanted $5.7 billion for the wall money. Remember that? And he said, I'm going to shut down the government unless you give me my wall money. And that's exactly what he did. And then finally, 5 weeks later, he relented. So this is very serious. And the other thing I would say is that it does look as though this could last a while. I don't see how you put these frayed coalitions back together.
I read that Democrats are thinking of maybe making a deal with McCarthy so that, they'll side with him on these votes that will keep him in office.
Exactly.
Keep him in that chair, yeah.
He's like the least crazy is the idea. That's exactly right. That somehow the Democrats would ride to McCarthy's rescue. But the Democrats are not going to do that on their own, meaning they're not going to do it just out of kindness. They'll want to extract some concessions from McCarthy before they do it. The other thing about this playing chicken with the U.S. economy, and that's what you are doing when you shut down the U.S. government, it could add huge worries to an economy that's already getting choppy with gas prices going up. There's a lot of good in the economy, as you're aware, but there are also some headwinds related mostly to gas prices, right? So here you go. The Strategists at Goldman Sachs estimate that this government shutdown would reduce U.S. economic growth by 0.2% for each week that it lasted. A partial closure of the government, which will not interfere with essential functions like military or Social Security payments, I was just saying, is not seen to be as toxic to the economy as a failure to increase the government's debt limit. That happened earlier this year. But U.S. stocks could be impacted. The S&P 500 likely to fall. Investors might be more sensitive to a shutdown because failure to pass a budget would highlight the gridlock and political instability in the United States of America. And the ratings agency, Fitch, downgraded the U.S. credit rating in August, remember? They may do that again. And that does affect the markets.
It's all because Congress people can't do their job.
Exactly right. Exactly right. So as all of this emanates from the hardline House Freedom Caucus and their insistence on these reduction in spending bills, you end up with real economic effects. And all analysts across the board, from Goldman Sachs to Fitch to Wells Fargo Investment Institute, all of them say this would be hugely damaging to this country, but it may, we're kind of on a collision course with it. Here it is. Paul Christopher, head of global investment strategy for Wells Fargo Investment Institute, believes any shutdown would likely be protracted as Republicans and Democrats begin positioning themselves for the presidential and congressional elections next year. So they'll dig in more, kind of, is his point. Well, anyway, that's the latest on that, and it's not a good update, but it's an important update nonetheless.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Rupert Murdoch is stepping down, Kim. I know.
Sayonara, sucker.
Sayonara, sucker.
Sayonara, sucker.
Well, he's been a problematic figure, to say the least. He, I would say, is one of the most transformative figures in the history of American media. He may be the most, in modern media, he may be the most transformative figure. I don't say that in a celebratory way. I say it in a way that is just, taking the measure of what he did. In any case, Rupert Murdoch, the powerful right-wing media mogul, he built and oversaw one of the world's most influential news empires, which is kind of my point. He announced that he's stepping down as chairman of his companies. For my entire professional life, I've been engaged daily with news and ideas, and that will not change, Murdoch said. But the time is right for me to take on different roles, knowing that we have truly talented teams here.
Good day, sir.
How old is Rupert Murdoch?
Really
Anybody
old.
know? How old? How old is the Roop? He came here from Australia. He became an American citizen, many would argue, just so he could buy all these media companies. He does have tremendous international holdings. He has Sky, he had 20th Century Fox, and then he did something so smartly. I'm stalling here while people guess, but I'm stalling with information. I'm a professional, please. The answer, let me see. 100, says JR. 97, says Julie.
Look what his legacy is. Look what he's left behind.
I mean, yeah.
For America, he had a really bad impact.
He is, Dan says 93. 86, says Doug. The actual retail age, 92. 92. He did something very cleverly. Kim, you're not wrong, of course. He you take it from the perspective, which I think is a healthy perspective from which to take it, which is the idea somehow that you could pollute the information stream with these fabrications and extreme right-wing ideologies, and in essence, create a cottage industry for everyone to do the same thing. You were most dominant at Fox News Channel, and you continue to be dominant. Mm-hmm. But the idea that you could just report stuff from one extreme perspective and essentially do attack pieces on those who disagree with your political ideology, that's something that Rupert Murdoch was really good at. And he did hatch an organization that got really good at it too. Roger Ailes and all of Roger Ailes' hench people, they all did his bidding. They hired attractive anchors, and they began this industry of misinformation and extreme positions. So it turned the news business into a tabloidy, politically, an industry informed by extreme political positions. Now, Murdoch's background is that. He comes out of tabloids, right? So when he legitimized himself, when he purchased the Wall Street Journal, and when he mainstreamed a lot of that, it maybe, and he has all of these international holdings, as I say, these media holdings. Maybe it somewhat covered up his, the reality, but that is his background. Now, I just want to say this. He is a shrewd business person. I mean, notwithstanding the fact that he overspent for MySpace, so that was a crazy buy. Not everything he does is perfect. But look, I think jury's in and out on this. I think he was a huge net negative. I mean, it's horrible what he did. But I'm talking about him now just as a business person. As a business person, he was shrewd beyond shrewd. He acquired all of these different ways to disseminate information and sports. He bought, B-Sky B, that Sky satellite network across Europe. He purchased the NFL for the fledgling Fox network, and that helped transform that network. That was a huge acquisition. I mean, everyone couldn't believe that he paid so much money for it. He way overpaid. But Murdoch knew that was going to be an acquisition that would allow him to platform a lot of his other stuff, to promote a lot of his other stuff. Then, as we said, Fox News Channel, Fox Business, it became this thing. But his acquisition of so much, and then his dumping, I'll remind you, just in the last 30 seconds on Rupert Murdoch, he dumped all of this. Look at all the stuff he divested himself from. He sold his entire IP library to Disney, right? So now he said, I'm just in the sports and news business. You can look it up.
Google it.
He took the money and ran.
Yeah.
And so now when you're seeing viewer numbers down and media in crisis and all this stuff, it doesn't affect Rupert Murdoch as much because he got out. He cashed the check. So to that extent, he's shrewd.
He shat on America for money, is what he did.
I think that's certainly a fair interpretation. So,
crude but true.
Luis on the super chat. We'll always read a super chat because super chats involve money, and we need money on the show. Of course, big shout out to Luis for this super chat. Yeah, Mark, he quote transformed everything into crap. Mm-hmm. I have a bottle of Johnny Walker Blue Label ready to toast his departure from the planet. Luis, not a Murdoch fan, apparently. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just went over what he hatched. It's a brutal reality, what he hatched, and what he's unleashed is still doing insane damage. And as I say, if the USA has another civil war, I know who I will blame. Yeah. Well, he's found the right country. I mean, although I think that this sort of disinformation is now the coin of the realm in a lot of other countries as well. So,
The Mark Thompson Show.
and then finally, before Kim's news, look at this, Kim. Radcliffe 1 says, hello, Mark. Thank you. My wife needs coffee for dietary reasons.
Okay.
She likes the solstice flavor from Coachella
Oh.
after trying several from around the Sacramento area. We
Nice.
love Coachella Valley Coffee. They are sponsors of Kim's News.
Mm-hmm.
They sponsor strategically newscasts, and that's really, we love having them in our family. And we told you we love their coffee. I have it right here, as a matter of fact. I'm just finishing it from this morning's. This is a Kim French press, is what I did this morning.
Oh, okay.
Oh.
I thought French press was the way that you make coffee. Like the way
Yes,
you...
French press is the way. No, French
Yeah.
press is the way. I was actually, I ground a, I believe the Ocotillo espresso bean, which can also work as a fine French press. You just, you grind it slightly more coarsely, and then you French press it. And they even send you, if you ask for it, at CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. Don't forget to get the discount code Mark T, because that will get you 10% off. But they'll even send you the right way to do French press. It's really cool. Like, there is a way. Now, you could probably Google that also, but I love that they take the care. They so concern themselves with you having a good tasting experience that they send it to you when you order it, if you ask for it. Yeah. So
That's
check
nice.
it. Yeah, CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. Mark T at checkout for 10% off. Still to come, and I'm just checking this. Albert, we have David Katz in the second hour. Am I right, sir?
That is correct.
Albert,
yes,
thank
we do.
you.
Okay. But in the next half hour, can I get into this MBS stuff? And the Saudis'
course.
role in 9/11?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
He was asked about that. I'll also get into the book burning, which I touched on, and news of the Nazis. Yeah, no, not the ones here. I know we have a lot now. That's sort of a big thing now. There is a growing Nazi population here in America, but this is the old school Nazis. Yeah, the ones from Germany and across Europe. So we'll get to that as well. Smash the like button like a boss. I haven't asked you through the entire show. Quick thumbs up.
Smashed it with your iron rod.
Costs nothing, and we do appreciate it. Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Yes, on the Mark Thompson Show, I'm Kim McAllister, and let us discuss today the United Association of Auto Workers, because if things don't change, nearly 13,000 UAW members say they could increase this strike situation tomorrow. Right now, nearly 13,000 are on strike. The number could go up. United Auto Workers President Shawn Fain set a Friday deadline for the big three U.S. automakers to respond to the union's demand for better pay and pension benefits. The strike is in its 7th day. And again, tomorrow is the day where it could get worse. A bipartisan group of House lawmakers trying to avert a government shutdown before the September 30th deadline. Will they be able to do it? Join us on the Mark Thompson Show. The group announced a plan that would fund the government through January while granting President Biden's request for more than $24 billion in funding for Ukraine. House Speaker Kevin McCarthy's bill leaves out Ukraine aid. It does include additional funding for border security. At this point, they don't seem really to be able to reach any type of an agreement. This guy is on the loose. It's another one of those situations where they made a mistake. A homicide suspect on the loose after a clerical error set him free in Indiana. Kevin Mason was mistakenly released last week from an Indiana detention center. It's unclear if he's still in the county. Unfortunately, he had been charged with a shooting, and apparently they released him by accident. Oops. Nope. Yeah.
My bad. I'm
My
sorry.
bad.
Where
I'm
was that,
sorry.
Albert? I thought you'd be. Albert is usually he's got the my bad. I'm sorry.
And get him back in custody now. I don't know.
What happened to my
bad.
I'm sorry. Thank you. I don't know what happened to it before. Well, I can.
Yeah.
Y'all can all go to hell, and I'm going back to Texas.
I don't think he's going to Texas.
Was wrong.
A little
it
more
was stupid,
information
and I'm
on
trying
him.
to be a better person.
Oh, now we're all piling on. Okay, good.
He was released because of a faulty records review.
Yes.
He's 28. They don't know if he's still in that county, but he was arrested on 3 Minnesota warrants, including one accusing him of a 2021 shooting in Minneapolis. A sheriff's clerk thought she was fixing a duplicate booking for him when he was accidentally released.
Oh, my God.
That's what happened there.
Yeah.
My bad. He's gone.
Wow.
Mississippi River. It's the Army Corps of Engineer trying to help raise water levels here. Water levels have dropped for the second straight year as a result of the summer drought caused by extreme heat and low rainfall. The engineers are trying to increase the size of a Louisiana levee to stop salt water from seeping into the drinking water in New Orleans. So. New York Governor Kathy Hochul is saying a recent act by the Biden administration should help free up some much-needed shelter space. The White House granted certain Venezuelans temporary protected status, which allows them to get work papers within 30 days instead of having to wait 6 months. The governor said volunteers and the National Guard are helping to connect Venezuelans with jobs. So who knows? Hopefully that will ease things up when people start working and they're able to afford to move somewhere besides a shelter. That could make a big difference in New York right now as shelter space is at a premium.
And that was a big decision on the part of the Biden administration. We mentioned at the beginning of the show, and we'll talk more about it with David Katz, the legal side of it, when he joins us in the second hour.
Let's talk about AI. I'll get a little picture of a super AI brain here. Look at that. OpenAI is launching DALL-E 3. The company says the text-to-image tool is easier to prompt now because it uses ChatGPT to help. Only ChatGPT subscribers can access what the company calls prompt engineering. In Novato, the Novato Community Hospital, they're using artificial intelligence to help train care for infants. A hospital, part of the Sutter Health System, according to the Marin IJ, they've acquired a robotic replica of a newborn girl. So they have a little robot baby, and it can simulate a number of medical conditions and scenarios in real time that emergency room staff members might not get to experience. So that's how they're helping train people. They say, I don't know anyone who doesn't get more emotionally revved up when it's a pediatric patient. It just naturally happens. Everything feels more intense. Everyone's more ramped up. The reality of working with a smaller patient is that everything is more delicate and smaller. So doing the procedures are more difficult. So having this little robot baby doll, they say, refines their skills and makes it a lot easier and more successful when they have to do it with a real patient.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, robot babies. Here they come. First, it's the robot baby, and then...
I could have a robot baby. I don't think I can have an actual baby.
Robot baby's okay, but
Never
a real
too old
baby,
for a robot
not so
baby.
much.
Right.
No. This report, again, is sponsored by Coachella Valley Coffee, the best coffee we know of. It's the truth. You can enter Mark T. You can see it there at the bottom of your screen. Mark T. all together at checkout for your exclusive 10% off across the board. I'm Kim McAllister. That's my name, and this is The Mark Thompson Show.
They had to close down an entire radio station to silence him. And now, he's here. Ladies and gentlemen, Mark Thompson.
I've told you, it's never easy being in this business.
The Mark Thompson Show.
We are here for you. That's the reason we do it for you. I'm your pasty white host, Mark, and Kim is here. Albert is here today. We're very excited about having the commissioner in the house with the Niners playing tonight. It's a very big deal.
Albert, thank you.
Yeah. So do you have any kind of pre-game ritual that you go through, Commissioner, or do you just like to take it as it comes?
Usually at this time of day, I'll be working, so I'll be trying to just sneak in the game at the other job. Yeah.
At the other job, are there a lot of monitors with the television set on? Without revealing what the other job is, I would think the answer might be yes.
Yes, because also Thursday nights are always Prime game on Prime. So I have Prime on my phone. I could take that wherever I go.
I forgot. Yeah, you can just have it right in your. You kids have the internet right there in your hand. It's great.
I have a question, Albert. I was reading a story about how Thursday night football is more difficult. Did you see that?
It's a shorter
Well, it's
week,
a shorter,
right?
it's a shorter week to prepare. So if like the Niners and the Giants both played on Sunday, they only have a few days to play and recover also from the previous games. So usually on Thursday nights, you bet the under, or you expect a not that great football game because everybody is just so beat up going into it. But
Then
it
why
gets
did-
a lot of viewers. So
Why did they do
everybody
it? That's
watches.
because they get the viewers. That's why they do it.
Yeah, the NFL is just trying to, and the NFL this year are playing on Christmas Day, which is brand new. So they're competing with the NBA. That's historically an NBA day, but we'll see how it goes this year.
Yeah.
I want to read some comments if I could, please. And, I never get a chance to talk to anybody anymore. I want to have a team meeting. I'm still working on trying to get everybody together. You wouldn't think with just really Kim, myself, Albert, and Tony, it would be that hard, but apparently it is. And then Kim leaves the show immediately to go to the after party. And it's just difficult. So I want to have a segment regularly where we read comments, but I have yet to hatch it with my other colleagues. So for now, I'll just say I want to read comments now. And thank you,
The Mark Thompson
for
Show.
thank you for participating in a robust and extremely impressive group of commenters in the live chat, and even after the show is concluded. Here comes. This is from Gail. I'm going to have to take some time away from the news. It's depressing and draining.
Oh, I'm
says
sorry,
Gail.
Gail. My bad. Yeah.
Yeah, I really blame Kim for
It's
not
my
finding
fault.
us.
Kim, how are you?
Yeah. I mean, can you not find
I
some?
gave you the robot baby story. I don't know what else you want from me.
Yeah, we try to sugarcoat things and try to give you all the bad news in a chocolatey shell, Gail. I mean, I gave you the Dancing with the Stars thing, Yesterday I gave you Vanna White. That's my attempt. I'm not doing that by accident. I'm trying to, weave some stuff in there that you might be able to groove on. That's not going to bum you out. But we certainly understand your problem. On the escape prisoner, shadow producer Calvin Wong says, why can't they just stamp killer on their foreheads? Well, it's a
wild idea, but it just might work.
I don't think we're allowed to do that, Calvin, but that's a very, very nice. There are a lot of things that are suggested in the chat that we're just not allowed to do, The question as to where these new immigrants to this country who will receive asylum and work permits, where they'll live, that's a legit question. There will be housing, and they will keep track of these people, I think, in a more diligent way than a lot of the others who are sort of waiting for their trial to begin. But it's a decent point that, we have a housing crisis in America, and these people will have to be housed. They will find housing, I think. I'd suggest that these asylum seekers who are granted asylum, they are actually attended to more diligently by the government than most who, again, are let in, awaiting trial, and then they're lost in the system. Hi, Kim.
Hi.
Says Daryl. And this is a super sticker, so big shout out. Thank you.
Big shout out.
Daryl Leffler says, hi, Kim. Our music school has online music theory classes for kids.
Oh, perfect.
And uses games and activities as a teaching tool, sharing music as far as Idaho, North Carolina, and Canada. Daryl Leffler's Academy of Music.
I'm writing it down, Daryl. This is exactly what I've been looking for.
Yeah.
Perfect.
The first lesson or your first participation with the class is free.
Oh, okay.
Daryl Leffler's Academy of Music.
I am
Thank you,
signing
Daryl.
up. Thank you, Daryl. That's
Yeah.
just
And
what I
thank you so
needed.
much.
Thank you so much.
No, that's very, very cool. That exists. So now back to the show, and I think some now I'm all worried about bumming Gail out. With I've got some good news, bad news. You want that?
The Mark Thompson Show.
All right, I'll lead with the bad news. The bad news is COVID is back, and we've got it in kind of a big way. The good news, though, is that the government is going to be giving you the free COVID tests again, offered to all U.S. households. So that will be a way you can keep track of COVID within your own home, within your own body, and then, again, perhaps get the vaccine. Did you see that? I know that there's a group of people who, doesn't want to get the vaccine, and they're alternative treatments and all this sort of thing. And I'm not as dismissive to those people as a lot of people are, but I'm also, I'm not in that camp. But that said, this vaccine hesitancy, which has always existed, it existed around the polio vaccine. It's hard to believe that, in the shadow of polio, you wouldn't run to get that vaccine. It's so damaging that it's polio, smallpox, fill in the blank. There are a lot of things that have been, life has been revolutionized as a result of vaccines. But again, a lot of people are hesitant, etc. So apparently, rabies is making a comeback in animals because people are hesitant to get their animals vaxxed.
Seriously?
What? Yes. Rabies is a serious and a highly fatal viral illness, circulates widely in a variety of wild animals. If someone's pet dog is bitten by a rabid animal and becomes infected, it will die a dramatic and painful death.
Oh.
During that time, it may expose its owners, as well as veterinary personnel and others who contact the creature, to that virus, creating risk of disease, death, and a need for costly public health investigations and containment efforts. The disease is transmitted to humans. You would get a rabies shot, as you're aware, through animal bites. Once the virus reaches the brain, it causes severe and almost invariably fatal neurological disease. And you get all this horrible stuff that I will spare you. It's really bad. So the World Health Organization says the rabies is responsible for approximately 59,000 human deaths a year.
That's a lot more than I thought.
Yeah, in more than 150 countries. 95% of these cases originate in Africa and Asia, acquired from dogs. Many of these victims are children who get bitten by these animals. Thankfully, a rabies vaccine exists that is highly effective and safe. It can save not only the lives of the vaccinated animals, but also potentially the lives of their human contacts as well, right? So there's been a lot of vaccinations through the years. If you have a dog, it's kind of on the vaccine schedule that you'll get your dogs vaccinated. Well, apparently there is pushback now. With rabies now thriving, it's by no means controlled. And it is in this country as well. 5,000 cases of rabies in animals are reported in the U.S. annually, mainly in wildlife, but it's out there. There is this vaccine hesitancy, which has led to the reemergence of rabies. We've not recognized the same degree of hesitancy noted in the study in respective veterinary practices, they say, but we have certainly noted an increased trend of questioning or declining vaccines for animals. The reality potentially puts us on a path to regression, where clinical rabies poses a significant risk to those that we love, both human and animal. There is a resurgence of rabies. Again, it's just percolating, but it's there, just as there is a resurgence in measles, COVID-19, as people are hesitant to get the vaccine. So rabies is a brutal illness. And again, if you can get the vaccine for your animal, it seems like the right way to go. But they're going to have to do another vaccine campaign for those who are vaccine hesitant about getting their animals the rabies vaccine. The problem is that science and a lot of established research is being denigrated. It's being run down. And you end up with this population that just rejects mainstream accepted science. And this life-saving rabies vaccine is now being rejected. And so increasingly, the cases emerge of not only animals with rabies, but people with rabies as well. So,
The Mark Thompson Show.
Well, I don't know if you saw it, but Howard Stern is saying it. Yeah, I'm woke. And it's, what's it to you? I saw this in Variety. Howard Stern tells off critics who say he's woke. He says, I'm anti-Trump, pro-vaccine, and support transgender people. I am woke, mother effer. By the way, this is a Kenya quote, I kind of take that as a compliment that I'm woke. I'll tell you how I feel about it. To me, the opposite of woke is being asleep. And if woke means I can't get behind Trump, which is what I think it means, or that I support people who want to be transgender, or I'm for the vaccine, dude, call me woke as much as you effing want. I'm not for stupidity, you know? I ran out Friday morning. I was over at CVS, thank you, CVS. I went over there at 9 a.m. and got myself that new vaccine for COVID. It's effing science. This effing country is so great. I am woke, mother effer, and I love it. I want to be awake. I want to read legitimate news sources. Here's how woke I am. I believe the election was not rigged. I am woke. I think that's a compliment. I'm for kids being able to read about anything in school. Yeah, I am. I don't give an S what kids read. Give me vaccines, man. I'm all for it. I like being woke. If that's what woke means, I'm woke. I said to Robin, his co-host, of course, and I hate to say this, but I said it to her, I'm actually going to probably have to run for president now. The problem with most presidents is they have too big of an agenda. The only agenda I would have is to make the country fair again. So that's the latest from Howard Stern. Wow, he really says it.
Good day, sir.
Exactly. Mark, were you in the day after tomorrow? This is a super sticker from Edward Lee. I believe he says, I watched it last night, and I'm pretty sure I heard your voice.
Big shout out.
Big shout out to Edward Lee, and thank you for the $5. The answer is, not only was I in the day after tomorrow, Edward Lee, but I feel I had the most pivotal sequence in the film.
Do you know who I am?
Yes.
Kind of a big deal.
It's a pivotal scene, Edward Lee. I'm the meteorologist there telling you that the world has never seen the kind of confluence
There's
of
never been anything like
meteorological
this.
events, yes, that we were seeing. It's crazy.
Have you ever seen anything like this?
No, that is the point. And I'm there in that pivotal moment in the movie.
There is nothing in our history that quite compares to this.
To say that. And thank you for recognizing it, Edward Lee. Edward Lee, our viewer of the moment so far, for recognizing my fine work in the day after tomorrow. By the way, I was going to, and I still might do this, read you my residual check numbers. Like, you know, every month I get a bunch of residual checks for the many things I've done in show business. As you know, I've been involved in many projects.
Do you know who
yes,
I am?
Thank you very much.
So
Kind of
then
a big deal.
there's big checks rolling into the Mark Thompson
they're
house.
not big, but when you add them all up, there's something. But I'm just noting that they're all going to go away. They're all going to go away because streaming, when they sell those projects, film, television, whatever, they sell them to streamers. There's no more residual. It literally goes away.
But that wasn't the deal they made with you when you did the movie.
I mean, that wasn't the deal that you had when you were a SAG-AFTRA member.
Right.
The union provides for you to be paid on that work.
Well, that's kind of stealing from you.
Yeah, it really is. But honestly, it's a business model that no one anticipated.
I disagree with it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
appreciate that. Anyway, so you can see why I've got to hustle here on YouTube and try to get you to smash the like button.
Smash it with your iron rod.
Yeah, my residuals are going away. Patreon and PayPal is how you support us and keep the show on the air. Patreon and PayPal, the links to both are at themarkthompsonshow.com. Kim's News, and then David Katz. We've got a lot to talk about in the world of law. There it is, themarkthompsonshow@gmail.com. That's the address to write us an email, Albert. That below, it's scrolling, is how to reach us if you want to become part of the community that supports us. themarkthompsonshow.com, Patreon or PayPal. And we will scroll your name at the end of the show because you make every show possible.
Yeah.
Thank you. So, as I was saying, news and then David Katz, Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show.
On the Mark Thompson Show, I'm Kim McAllister, and we will start with the fact that the United States now has a new Air Force general. His name is Charles Q. Brown Jr., and he is set to become America's top military officer. Brown was confirmed as chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff in a Senate vote last night with bipartisan support. He will succeed Army General and current chairman Mark Milley, whose term ends next month. Finally found a way around Mr. Tuberville is what happened there.
It wasn't easy, yeah.
No, finally did it, though. The mayor of Eagle Pass, Texas, says the border town is flooded with thousands of migrants. Mayor Rolando Salinas Jr. is declaring a state of emergency in Eagle Pass, where he says more than 2,500 migrants crossed the Rio Grande to get into the United States yesterday alone. President Biden is appointing a coordinator for long-term recovery efforts at the scene of that toxic train derailment in Ohio. A Norfolk Southern freight train carrying hazardous materials derailed near East Palestine, Ohio last February, spilling toxic chemicals. On Wednesday, President Biden issued an executive order directing FEMA to name a recovery coordinator within 5 days. Saudi Arabian Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman says if Iran gets a nuclear weapon, his country would have to prepare to do the same thing. In an interview with Fox News, bin Salman said he does not want to see that happen. 17 writers, including Game of Thrones author George R.R. Martin, are suing OpenAI and its ChatGPT program for unlawfully copying their works. Michael Connolly, the author of Bosch and Lincoln Lawyer, also claims his books were taken without his consent. The lawsuit filed in Manhattan federal court alleges damaging infringement to registered copyrights. They say AI can't be using our books to make itself smarter.
Yeah, that's I get ready for more suits like that, right, Kim? I think so.
That's right. India has suspended. You should sue as well. It can't take away your money coming in from the day after tomorrow.
Yes, thank you.
I'm going to file a lawsuit on your behalf. I'm retaining David Katz. This is outrageous.
Kim is outraged on my behalf. Finally, I've brought her over. Yes.
Done. India suspending visa services for Canadian citizens over what it says are security threats against diplomats in Canada. This after Canada accused India of potentially being behind the assassination of a Sikh separatist activist on Canadian soil. So now the organization that handles visa applications for India in Canada has sent a letter to the Indian stock exchanges saying visa services have been suspended until further notice. This is heating up, this one. Have you been following the Strike Force 3 live talk show with all the night hosts? You know, they have got all the talk show hosts, and because of the writer's strike, they've gathered together to do this show. The money that they make from it will go to their writers. Well, they had an upcoming Strike Force 3 live show.
That's with all the talk show hosts. You're saying Colbert and Kimmel,
right?
Okay,
all of them.
Fallon,
They were going to go to Las Vegas to do a show live. They were to appear Dolby Live at Park MGM in Las Vegas on Saturday to record a live episode of their podcast, Strike Force 5. Well, no. They have to cancel it because Jimmy Kimmel has COVID and says the show cannot go on. He says, well, Las Vegas, I got COVID. And sadly, we need to cancel this weekend's Strike Force 3 show. He said, I could never live with myself if I got my hometown friends sick. So that's the way it goes.
That's right. He's a Vegas kid. Sure.
Yeah. So it's canceled. COVID strikes again. Sorry, I meant to end on an uplifting note, but we're not doing that. We're ending on the, how about this? Tom Gunn for $5. Woohoo! That's uplifting. We appreciate your contribution to the Mark Thompson Show. This report is sponsored by Tom Gunn and you, which means we rely on you to crowdfund the show. So thank you so much for visiting themarkthompsonshow.com. Themarkthompsonshow.com is where you'll find the Patreon and the PayPal link that you can click through and contribute. Thank you so much. I'm Kim McAllister. This is The Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Who's Mark Thompson?
Feels great, baby.
Let me kick down the door and talk to my cheap sons and daughters.
No context will suffice to explain the hurt and anguish caused by my words. I apologize to all who have been hurt.
I stand corrected. I misspoke. My words upset so many people.
And I wanted to apologize to the Asian community, the Asian American community.
God bless America. The end.
There's never been anything like this. Do I hit it long? Is Trump strong? Huh?
Who is having that conversation?
It's fantastic.
That's not fake. That's real.
The science is ridiculous.
How would you handle this? We could try ignoring it, sir.
If you get it in order, you get extra points.
Listen to me. I don't want to hear you.
You cannot say you love your country.
Where are my weed smokers at?
This is a word from the Lord, and he's not happy.
There is no defense for my conduct. It was wrong, it was stupid, and I'm trying to be a better person.
Don't ever use that word.
You get nothing.
What's a guilty pleasure you have?
Seriously, what the
What up, everybody? Oh, sorry.
Oh, what's happening?
Sorry about that. Albert, I am here. There you go. Well done.
You big and me little. There you go. Okay.
It is with the greatest excitement that I am ramping up and looking at our, before I get to David Katz, I want to quickly update what looked to be some cool, first of all, I echo the thank you to Tom Gunn for the $5. Thank you for Super Sticker, Super Chat. You can always support the show that way in the moment if you're feeling it.
Big shout out.
My favorite gun is the Tom Gun. And then this from William Martinez. What part of the day after tomorrow is Mark in? The best part. That's what I would say. That's the part of the day after tomorrow I'm in, is the best part. It's about, I want to say it's about a third of the way through the movie. Amy says, chit, 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 I thought you settled on the.
Chit, chit, chit. I was told the is grammatically incorrect, that the is only used when you have a vowel coming up, and M is not, so it's a consonant.
Is that right?
So
I never knew
that. I have
that.
to say the. So you
I had
say
no idea.
You say the Acorn, the Oakland City Council, but you don't say, and then you say the Mark Thompson Show when that's I don't know. I'm just trying to make everybody happy.
No,
I'll
I
do
know
whatever
you
you
are,
want,
and
Amy.
I really, I love that. I love that,
Yeah.
but I don't know that those rules apply. I think it's pretty much optional. You know, it's I think it's again, it's whatever you want it to be. Anyway, I love that you're thinking about it, though. You see, Kim is thoughtful and reflective and probably takes your comments too seriously. But that's the way we are on this show. So, all right.
The Mark Thompson Show.
On Thursdays, this gentleman joins us, and we are so proud to have him part of our mix. He'll break down any number of things that are happening in the courts. When it comes to law, he's such a great authority, and his predictions have been so very accurate. He's the former federal prosecutor. Now he works the defense side of the table. You can hear him on London radio in the morning. They bring David Katz in for legal analysis there. In Australia, across the world, in the English-speaking world, David Katz is quite dominant. He even shows up on Fox News. Yeah. That's right. But with us on Thursdays, how about it for David Katz, everybody?
Hi, great to be with you guys.
Hello, sir. You had mentioned DACA last week, the group of kids who find themselves here in this country. And that's been an embattled program, legally embattled program. But a group of kids who find themselves here from other places. And they're granted a certain status. And so when this other story broke, David, I thought, it just broke in the last 24 hours, about the nearly 500,000 Venezuelans that are going to be offered temporary protection. The Biden administration made this decision. I thought of you, and I wonder if you could give us a sense of sort of the legal status of these people and a little, these people are seeking asylum here, and they're granted essentially with this act residency and working permits in this country as asylees?
Yes, this is the Temporary Protected Status Program. It's extremely controversial, and all of the issues behind it are controversial. And of course, there's the humanitarian side, which, believe me, I understand and I'm very sympathetic to. And of course, there's the more practical side, the side that Mayor Adams in New York City has been reflecting now for months, which basically says our compassion is boundless, but our resources are not. He's talking about maybe a 25% cut in city resources. That would be all the people who have rent vouchers, getting them cut 25%. All the people who get city assistance, 25%. Schools cut 25%. Police, firefighters cut 25%. So it's hugely controversial. People say as a political issue, this influx into New York City, just to take one city, 120,000 asylum seekers in a year, is really unsustainable, and it may have political consequences. You know, the Democrats may not lose New York in the 2024 election. New York seems to be a safe state, but they're losing these congressional districts, Mark. You know, the House kind of went with the defeat of 4 or 5 suburban New York Congress members, and with it went the House, which is 4 votes Republican, and they lost about 4 seats just in the New York City suburbs over the supposed escalation of crime. And people are worried that this is another one of those wedge issues that's going to end up being a big deal. Now, to get specific about the Venezuelans, of this 120,000, they think half of it are Venezuelans. So in other words, 60,000 people from Venezuela have entered just New York City in the last year. There's more than that in the country. And of course, the cities and states like New York City, New York State are screaming for money. So is Chicago for the Venezuelans who are arriving. And to a lesser extent, I guess, LA being 3 real magnet cities and so-called sanctuary cities. So again, it's all wrapped up in all that controversy. I'd like to try to just stay on the legal side of it. The legal side of it is that 250,000 or so Venezuelan immigrants coming into the United States were allowed to have this temporary protected status. But yesterday, Department of Health and Human DHS, Department of
Homeland Security.
Department of Homeland Security, led by Alejandro Mayorkas, who used to be the U.S. Attorney here in Los Angeles, announced that 472,000 Venezuelans. And that brings the total number to over 700,000 Venezuelans. Now, people may say, oh my God, they're half the group that's gone to New York City. How many are there? And the answer is that there are something like 6 or 7 million. And this all goes back to the problems in Venezuela, which can I touch on for just 1 minute?
Absolutely. I think they're behind everything. Please.
In 1977, I was a very good student of Spanish, and I said to one of my professors, well, this is great. I can read Don Quixote in the original 100 Years of Solitude by Gabriel Garcia Marquez. Can I make some serious money doing this? He said, about all I can think of is go to Venezuela. There's so much money flowing around in Venezuela. They're sitting on the biggest reserves of petroleum in the world, more than Saudi Arabia. Go down there to Venezuela. You're an active guy. You speak for yourself, knock on doors, and money will find you. And I went down. The second door I knocked on, I got a job all summer long as a legal translator. I made a fortune. The Venezuelans had an expression in those days. They were so rich. If they didn't want to do something, Mark, they would say, let a Colombian do it. Que lo haga un colombiano. Meaning, right, let the Colombians, let all the illegal immigrants who are working at jobs, let the Colombians do it. And that was their attitude toward me, toward these incredibly well-paid translations. Let the gringo do it. Let the Norteamericano do it. I made a fortune, and it was such a rich country. Caracas was like a little New York City, okay? But then, it's the price of oil. It's so dependent on the price of petroleum. It goes up, it goes down. It's been down for a while. On top of that, Hugo Chavez became the populist leader. He won elections, like a Mussolini with this rhetoric. He was very nationalistic. The poor adored him. He won elections. Now that he's passed away, there's a fellow down there named Maduro who doesn't so much win elections as not leave power. But we have all these sanctions now against Maduro, and we can't get rid of him. And the country has fractured. There's like a civil war going on down there, and 7 million people have left Venezuela. Now, you can see that as a refugee humanitarian crisis. You can see that as people in need of political asylum. They're coming here seeking asylum. At the same time, you say to yourself, if they really like living here more than in Colombia, which seems like the other alternative, they're willing to learn English and live in a country with a foreign language and a different culture. You also think, well, why shouldn't they come here? So after we have 700,000 in temporary protected status, are we going to have 1 million more? And what are the politics of that? And what are the economics of that? And again, it's this whole thing. We have big hearts. We want to help people. We want to help refugees. We want to help people seeking asylum. And the other side, I can just say this, Mayor Bloomberg, former mayor of New York City, wrote an article in, I think, an editorial in the Wall Street Journal or someplace like that. And he said the reality of these asylum cases is it takes 7 years for them to be adjudicated. And 95% of them probably are not well taken. So you have all these people who are given work permits, who are allowed to live here in the United States, right? Who are going to ultimately lose their asylum claims. Now, of course, the left says, are you crazy? We're not going to lose our asylum claims. This country is in the middle of a political humanitarian disaster. This is just the kind of people that we should take into the United States. They will win a lot of them, their asylum claims. And then you say to yourself, well, wow, shouldn't somebody get involved if we're really going to take millions of people from this once rich country into the United States? Should somebody decide besides, the DHS secretary and presumably Biden? Of course, this wouldn't be happening if Biden weren't supporting this. He's gotten a huge amount of pressure. So let me turn it back to you, Mark, see if that was helpful.
Well, that was very helpful. I mean, and it's interesting when you talk about Biden pressure, the pressure comes from where, David? I know this is a little bit of the politics of it, but when you look at this is a substantial decision, which is why we're spending a heartbeat on it. Where is the pressure to allow these huge numbers of asylees into this country coming from?
Well, people like AOC, in Queens, New York, she has a very safe district and a very left-leaning, very pro-immigrant, being allowed into the country leaning district. And if you look at a lot of the districts around the country, especially the ones that are left and that are Hispanic, this is a huge issue. One of the things that people wonder is the rubber going to hit the road in a real bad way when this becomes an issue between the blacks and between the Hispanics? Like I said, if New York City really is going to cut back 25% on all of its social services, what will the impact be not only on white people, but black people who need services in New York City? So people start to get their schools cut. These folks are all allowed to go to school. If you remember Prop 187, one of the things that you really can't do under our Constitution is deny even immigrant kids, even, quote, illegal immigrant kids, an education. So they show up at schools. They showed up here in California under 187, and they show up in New York City. School just started, and they all show up for class. Can the classes support that? Can the teachers teach that number of kids? And then, of course, just the sheer number of 120,000 people in 1 year. There are tent cities around New York City and so forth. So will there be a tension between that good-heartedness, that generous nature, that wanting to help people who are in trouble? New York City, so famously, Statue of Liberty, right? Give me your poor, your huddled masses yearning to be free, right? There's the Statue of Liberty right there, but there's a tent city. They have 20,000 people living in what used to be soccer and softball fields. And of course, the New York Post goes around every single day and interviews some poor single mother on the Lower East Side who said, hey, I used to have a plan for my kid to go play soccer or softball. Now the immigrants have a big tent city out there, right? And so you're starting to have those kind of tensions. Can I mention one more thing, Mark, which I think is interesting from a legal point of view? You know, this is a political decision. And I think it's going to end up being a huge issue between Biden and Trump, who I think will be the two candidates again. People say there aren't real issues. It's all demagoguery. This, whether you like it or not, is a real issue. Trump had remain in Mexico. The day that Biden won, like inauguration day, he said, I am getting rid of remain in Mexico. The very next day, he got rid of it. That went all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court, and they won 5-4. The ruling was that Biden could get rid of remain in Mexico. And Roberts and Kavanaugh said so. 5-4, they won. Biden could get rid of remain in Mexico. Under remain in Mexico, there were basically two options that Trump was following. Now, of course, like everything Trump did, it was disorganized and crazy, and he didn't do it very well. But the idea was you either remain in Mexico while you waited for your asylum application, among other things, to be adjudicated. You remained in Mexico. We got Mexico to go on board. Obviously, we gave them some foreign aid. We gave them other concessions, but we got Mexico to go on board with this and to keep the people there. And then the other thing that they could do was detain them. Now, we don't have enough facilities to detain people. You think one of the things Trump might have done was massively build like the Chinese do. Remember under COVID, how they massively built these facilities in 2 weeks? Why can't American ingenuity do that? But there'd be a lot of controversy. They would be called concentration camps. They'd be called all sorts of things, right? So they weren't built. So the reality was the Congress says you're supposed to detain these people. You're not supposed to have them go all over America. You're supposed to detain them or have them in Mexico, which is what Trump pretty much tried to do. But the other option is to parole them into the United States. That's what Biden and Mayorkas have been doing since they've been in office, is to parole these people into the United States. Now, Mark, the Supreme Court decision says that's on a case-by-case basis. So a lot of the conservatives who are screaming are saying case-by-case basis. Okay, 2,800 people arrived in Eagle Pass, Texas the other day. 2,800 in a day. 120,000 people just going to New York City, forget Chicago and the other cities. What do you mean? They're being paroled on a case-by-case basis. But I think what they actually do is they write down their name, some kind of identifying information. Then you have the non-governmental organizations, again, acting from the goodness of their heart, right? Some of them are getting money from the government, too, because they're NGOs and they get some government funding. And they give these poor folks a bus ticket. And before you know it, they're in New York or Chicago. So they're paroled into the United States. But stepping back from it, people say, wow, there's millions of asylum seekers who it doesn't look like are really going to get asylum because they're saying that they're suffering domestic violence. If you're going to let in everybody suffering domestic violence, Mark, how many people is that, right? How many people is that? If you're going to let in all the people who are from these countries where the government is no good and it's falling apart, how many people are that? Is that the asylum persecution that the law is really thinking about when you let in Haiti? You let in everybody from Haiti. What an awful place to live, Mark. Would you want to live in Haiti unless you were one of the top 1%?
Yeah, unless you're the corrupt top 1%, exactly. No,
you'd want
so
to
you're
come
saying
to
that,
America. Of
you're
course
saying
you
that,
want to come to America. But at some point, people say, you know, once you meet these folks, of course you like them. You want to help them. They'd be a great nanny. They'd be a great whatever they are. Once you meet them, it's all different. But when you look at it stepping back and you say there's tens of millions of people who would like to come to America, that's where all of this tension is. And a lot of people aren't really honest with pollsters and everything else. And before you know it, they're voting for Trump. So since one of my great goals in life is to not have the restoration of Trump, I'm worried about this issue.
Wow, you've said so much, and you really stuck the landing, too. I mean, I wanted to share with you some of the comments along the way, which I think somebody said, Randy says, did Katz just say that Trump had some good ideas on this? Do you want to, I mean, you said the idea of remain in Mexico was a good idea. You felt that that was because for whatever reason, we haven't been able to construct, build, or otherwise fabricate both the infrastructure physically and the infrastructure legally to handle this kind of influx. Isn't that kind of what you're saying?
Well, look, it may be that there are 120,000 jobs that need filling in New York City, but does anybody really feel sure about that? Doesn't this just sort of seem like a totally disorganized, and you know what the Republicans say, they say these are sanctuary cities, they're getting hoisted on their own petard. They say, you know, it's so terrible the way Trump and Texas treat these people crossing the border. It's so terrible the way you treat them. Well, okay, we'll bust them up, which Texas and Florida do. Well, they're not all bad. Only about 10 or 12% of them are actually bust by Texas or Florida. The rest get there on their own. But after, you know, these are not people, generally speaking, who snuck through and somehow made their way. They're people who ran across the border, went up to a customs or immigration officer and said, I'm here, I'm seeking asylum. Their name and information was taken by the officer, and then they went on their merry way. Generally, a lot of them stayed in Texas, okay? That was their volition. But a lot of them exercising their volition and getting a ticket from one of these NGOs, a bus ticket, they went to New York on a bus all by themselves, not because, you know, Governor Abbott down there stuck them on a bus. So it's a very difficult problem. Of course, we should have comprehensive immigration reform. And a lot of people think that you know, these would not be nice places, the ones along the border that they would wait, or the ones in Mexico where they would wait. But how nice are the places in New York City where they're living in a tent city, or they're all standing out in front of hotels because the hotel gets messed up? And then there's the $12 billion tab mark. I mean, at some point, and everyone says, well, why don't you tax Amazon? Why don't you tax Apple? Why don't you cut the defense budget? Let's assume for a second that none of those three things happened, and that the pie ends up getting shared, right, between the poor who are already here and this influx. What is that going to do for the election in 2024? I'm worried about it.
Yeah, that's the political reality. I may misunderstand something, meaning I felt that the U.S. government, the Biden administration, would keep closer track of these asylum seekers who are granted asylum. Not just the seekers, but those asylees. They are in now. We bought your story, and now, as you say, you have a temporary protected status. I thought that this administration would be more diligent about where they go and integrating them into both the economy and the housing situation across the country. You're saying, nah, they're going to set up, as you say, in tent cities and be roaming the streets like so many others who become disenfranchised, almost start disenfranchised from this economy.
Well, there's a few problems. Number one is always this push-pull. And so the argument always goes, especially nowadays, that people have cell phones and ways to communicate back in the countries that they're coming from or back to Mexico. Once 472,000 people get temporary protected status, can't be deported, are going to get work permits, and they send that message back to their family or to people they know in Venezuela, in Colombia, or waiting in Mexico, right? That's going to be a huge inducement. You know, Mayorkas says, we are not going to have any more TPS people after the end of July. Really? That's what they said when they granted the 250 back in March 2021. This is it, no more. And now 472,000 people crossed, and 472,000 people are covered by the program. I mean, this is human beings. If you're a human being wanting to come to America, right, wanting your family to come to America, why would you not say, I'll be in the next group? There were 250 that were in a group. There were 472,000 in a group, and we'll be the post-July group. And guess what? We'll be allowed to stay here. We'll get TPS. So it's a very, very difficult issue. And, you know, if they do both these work permits, right, you know what the reaction is going to be. The reason Biden doesn't want to be big-hearted and do this is because the Republicans are just waiting to pounce. People had to wait in line. We do have a system for selecting who's allowed to come here. These people all jumped the line. They all got away with it. They got a work permit. The people who are waiting for years to get a green card, many of them can't work, but these people instantly got a work permit, 472,000 of them. And again, the question, how much are they really political refugees in the sense that people think of that traditionally? Pol Pot takes over the country. Hitler takes over the country. We passed these asylum laws because America did very little about sheltering the Jews. And so many Jews before World War II would have been able to get out had America taken them. We didn't take them. My own father got out of Germany very last minute, and he went to England. America didn't take him. England, he had a sponsor, and the United Kingdom took my dad and his family in 1939. America did not, and the shame of not having done that has inspired these political asylum laws. And then the other side of it says, how much are these people really like the model of political asylum? And you can argue that all day long. And the other problem is it takes 7 years to get adjudicated. So one thing that they haven't gotten together and done is have 1,000 new immigration judges. Take these former assistant U.S. attorneys like myself. I don't want to be an immigration judge. But you know how many hundreds of people would like the honor of being a federal immigration judge? They could recruit nonpartisan people just like that and adjudicate these cases much, much faster. But again, it's so polarized, right, that the Republicans and the Democrats can't get together on a comprehensive bill. That's what we were talking about with DACA. DACA would be its most popular feature, right? But none of it's ever happened. This big immigration bill, the comprehensive immigration bill that everybody talks about, has never happened. And so this is the latest. I mean, it's a mess. Whatever people think of the politics of it, the law of it, it is truly a mess what's going on right now.
You mentioned the 7-year wait. If they waited in Mexico for that 7-year period, they're essentially residents of Mexico. I mean, but your point is, yeah, but they're not in this country feeding what is a growing problem with an overpopulation of immigrants who have come here seeking economic fortune. I mean, fortune with a small f. I mean, just any kind of sustenance. And then I'm also struck by the fact that so many of the slaughterhouses across America and the crap jobs that Americans don't want for the slave wages, I mean, effectively, that are often paid, those jobs are done by these people to whom we're referring. I mean, I was reading, last thing real quick, I was reading an article, it's a really great piece, and I was going to share it here in May still next week in the New York Times, breaking down how they use child labor in so many of these slaughterhouse situations and these just horrifying, there was a chicken farm where they've got these people who are 14 years old that one of whom I think lost an arm in some machine there. I mean, you're allowed to play so fast and loose the minute you're using this underclass of people who can't complain. Now, those are people who are here illegally. These asylum seekers would be here legally, so they might fall into a different class. But all I'm trying to say is the economy is underpinned by a lot of that population, isn't it? A part of the economy?
Well, one thing to make clear, I think it's important because it's easy to get lost. The temporary protective status for the Venezuelans covers all of them. Normally, an asylum seeker has to win their asylum petition, but this entire group is going to be allowed to stay here until there's a determination that the political situation has changed in Venezuela. TPS has also been given to people from like Nicaragua, El Salvador, right, that have their own huge political crises at home. And then the idea is that once things get better, these people can go home. Of course, a lot of people don't want to go home. They've gotten used to being in America. There's always a huge thing that it's racist, et cetera, et cetera. When they try to say, hey, you know what? Political emergency at home is over. All of you folks, Salvadoreños, right? Nicaraguenses, and it'll be Venezolanos, go back to your country. That's a whole other moment. But for right now, Mark, all of these people that are covered, these 700,000 plus Venezuelans that have come in the last few years, they're all covered under they cannot be deported and they can get work permits, whether they show asylum or not in the 7-year period. And yes, there's huge exploitation of labor. The labor unions have always been against illegal immigration. Cesar Chavez was against illegal immigration. You can look it up. Cesar Chavez and Bobby Kennedy went to the border and demanded they do more about illegal immigration into the United States because they could never organize the farm workers union as long as there were, quote, scabs who were crossing the border and willing to take those jobs. They could never organize a union. And they've used these, illegal entrants, these undocumented aliens, to break unions, right, and to drive down union wages, or all across the Midwest, right? That's what's really going on. And there's a way to curtail that. Talk about work for white-collar criminal defense attorneys, right? You hire illegals. There's a card, right? There's an e-verification that's very hard to beat. The worker doesn't give the e-verification. You don't hire them. You hire a bunch of people to work at your packing plant who don't have the e-verification card, or it's funky. You get prosecuted, right? You get prosecuted for breaking the law, breaking the labor laws criminally. But the Republicans never want to do that. The Republicans never want to do that. That's the part of the immigration package that they never seem to want to do, even though it would greatly curtail illegal immigration, wouldn't it?
The idea that you would appropriate, and I mean, it makes so much sense that regardless of what side of the issue you're on, that you would appropriate money to flood the border with judges. I mean, there should be tons of them down there, as you suggested, to handle this. I mean, that seems like an easy chip shot from where we are, and yet we can't even get that. And so we end up in this place with a problematic, to say the least, immigration situation. And it sounds as though David Katz, and this is really interesting because you have I didn't even realize how deep a perspective you have on this. It sounds as though you're kind of saying, hey, this a kind of zero immigration policy, or well, here's what it is. When you're saying, hey, you've got to wait like all the other asylum seekers, you have to wait, and you have to wait outside this nation. It sounds as though you're kind of in a zero immigration policy situation. That's effectively zero immigration, isn't it, given in the backlog?
Well, I myself am not. First of all, I'm bilingual. I'm fine with a lot of people who speak Spanish coming here. I don't have this idea of, oh my God, it's somehow diluting. We're becoming a more bilingual country. Not a bad thing. Plus, we need work. What happened in Germany? Germany took about 1 million people from Syria. And they said, you know what? We need people. We have sort of zero population growth in America. Plus, we have a lot of jobs that, frankly, American citizens, people raised here, don't want to do. So we need a lot of these people. It seems a little chaotic. Look what Canada does. Canada actually selects. Now, they don't have a long border with Mexico like we do. We have this long, you cannot build a wall. You cannot effectively patrol a 2,000-mile long border. So there's that to go into it. And we do need labor. And so I guess one side of it is just to say, look, we get the people who are hardy enough to make it here. The people who trek through the Darien Gap in Panama, say what you want to, right? It's almost like a survival of the fittest. They managed to get here. Some of them have gotten there with their kids. They've been on that train called La Bestia through Mexico.
That's brutal.
Right? And
riding on the top of the train. Oh,
you've got this very hardy group that's gotten here. They're hardy enough to get here, and maybe that's the, after all the chaos, that's sort of the reality. We are not putting a lid or controls on this. And all these other countries, they do that, they do this. They don't have a 2,000-mile border between a very wealthy country, generally speaking, and a very poor country. And it would seem like diplomacy. If you want to stop this problem, you could have more diplomacy with Mexico. You would have Mexico, and they did. They did that under Trump. He gave them a lot of inducements to help these people not go through Mexico and not cross the border as much. And again, I just think it's going to be a big political issue. And I think a lot of people are very big-hearted. And I think all of us are big-hearted once you get to know the person and they're there and you realize that we need them to work here. But, conceptually, Mark, if you think about it, why shouldn't the other millions that are down in Colombia and probably unhappy, why shouldn't they trek up to the United States if you're going to get a work permit and not be deported?
Yeah, it's clearly now, as you suggested, when you have this huge number of asylees granted asylum, asylum seekers granted asylum as asylees, I guess they would be.
TPS.
Yes. That's protected status. You're right. It's like firing a flare saying, hey, we're in. And it was also understood that a lot of illegal immigrants, so that he didn't have, undocumented workers, undocumented immigrants, were granted that, what was it called? Amnesty. And when that happened, it was like, oh, I get it. So if I come in, cross the border, as you say, go through this, survivor show of crap to make it, and then I hang out long enough in the underworld of the U.S., eventually, I'll be granted essentially this, it's not asylum, but I'll actually become a citizen. Isn't that what, that's what happened?
I was an assistant U.S. attorney here in Southern California when President Reagan granted the amnesty. It was, of course, controversial. And Reagan just said, look, it's the right thing to do. These people have been here. They've gotten acclimated here. If they don't have a criminal record, we ought to give them asylum. And we're going to have so much border protection that there won't be a new wave. Well, Reagan was wrong on that. There's been wave after wave. And, some of it's just economics. When the economy is good, people come. You can build walls. You can hire more border patrol people. When the economy is good, they'll come. When the economy is not so good, they won't come. And there are all these political calamities, including in Venezuela. You just wonder, wishful thinking that we could have handled the situation with Chavez and Maduro in a different way so that 7 million people didn't flee the country and they didn't have all of these horrible dislocations and worse. And did I mention that they have the largest petroleum reserve in the world, and yet they're a poor country now? It's unbelievable.
I mean, it's crazy. You're right. We sowed the seeds of a lot of that which they are fleeing. And it's been noted in the chat, maybe we're paying that price now, but it's an awful price to pay. And then, of course, the other political blowback is Biden dumps the border problem assigns it to his vice president, Kamala Harris, who is already sort of troubled in terms of public perception with, public missteps, et cetera, things from interviews, et cetera. And so this is an intractable issue that she is assigned to sort of deal with. She goes to Central America to try to do the very things that we've talked about, like, give them seed money, different things to try to improve their economy. But there's just not enough seed money in the world to reverse this flow. And so that's the political blowback that she endures.
Do we have a minute to talk about Merrick Garland?
Merrick Garland, yeah. Now on to Merrick Garland. So yesterday, Merrick Garland was in front of the Jim Jordan committee. And I think we actually have a piece of, Albert, do you have that piece of video of, no? You there, Albert?
Intense political attacks. Attorney General Merrick Garland delivering a blunt message to Congress.
I am not the president's lawyer. I will add, I am not Congress's prosecutor. Justice Department works for the American people.
Garland appointed the special counsel who indicted the president's son, Hunter Biden, last week on felony gun charges after a plea deal fell apart. Hunter Biden says he intends to plead not guilty. But Chairman Jim Jordan, who's leading an impeachment inquiry into the president, blasted Garland for not prosecuting felony tax charges related to income from Hunter Biden's overseas business dealings.
What I'm wondering is why you guys let the statute of limitations lapse for those tax years that dealt with Burisma income.
This investigation was being conducted by Mr. Weiss, appointee of President Trump. You will, at the appropriate time, have the opportunity to ask Mr. Weiss that question.
With former President Trump indicted by special counsel Jack Smith for attempting to overturn the 2020 election and mishandling classified documents, pleading not guilty in both cases, Republicans arguing the DOJ is engaged in prosecutorial overkill.
The fix is in.
Democrats defending Garland, saying the Republicans can't back up their claim. Facing hours of intense questioning, Garland, who's often talked about his Jewish heritage, flashing anger in response to a question about whether his department is targeting conservatives, including Catholics.
The idea that someone with my family background would discriminate against any religion is so outrageous.
Also refuting the charge by Mr. Trump that President Biden ordered his indictments.
Biden political indictments. He said to the Attorney General,
he's had nothing to do with it.
He said to the Attorney General, indict him.
No one has told me to indict, and in this case, the decision to indict was made by the special counsel.
Okay, now that's enough, Albert. Now, David Katz, that's just a little setup of what was happening yesterday. Please go ahead.
Well, first of all, there are some things that are absolutely clear, which are that Merrick Garland did not have Weiss indict. Did not tell Jack Smith the special counsel on the Trump case, to indict him in either one of those cases. The only thing that I would fault Merrick Garland for, and you and I have talked about it, is that he spent over 2 years after January 6, 2021, before he named a special counsel, before he named Jack Smith. And so if you want to argue the other side of it, he waited all that time. Then he put a real go-getter on there, figuring that would get Trump probably indicted 6 or 7 months later, given the evidence against him. And it would end up being during the political season, if you want to argue it from Trump and the Republicans' point of view. And so this was delayed by Merrick Garland and then timed in a way that it would intrude into the electoral season. And so you'd have a federal judge telling Trump, as he was told, I don't really see you as a political candidate. I see you as just another defendant. And what the Republicans want to do is they want to have the whataboutism. They want to argue to the American public that, yeah, well, Trump is going through all these trials, but, Biden is going through an impeachment. So a pox on both their houses. They're all corrupt, and try to minimize how incredibly corrupt, in my opinion, Trump is and how much he deserves to be indicted in at least 3 of the cases. My jury's still out on the New York hush money to the porn star case, but the other 3 cases hit me as very righteous against him and well taken.
This struck me as theater. I mean, like so many of these hearings do. I mean, and so the other theatrical moment I thought was well done by Eric Swalwell, where he essentially, I don't know if Albert, you have that Swalwell moment. It's pretty strong. It's short, but Swalwell essentially, you talk about not respecting a subpoena. I mean, here's a Swalwell moment.
Mr. Attorney General, my colleague just said that you should be held in contempt of Congress, and that is quite rich, because the guy who's leaving the hearing room right now, Mr. Jordan, is about 500 days into evading his subpoena. About 500 days. So if we're going to talk about contempt of Congress, let's get real. I mean, are you serious that Jim Jordan, a witness to one of the greatest crimes ever committed in America, a crime where more prosecutions have occurred than any crime committed in America, refuses to help his country, and we're going to get lectured about subpoena compliance and contempt of Congress? Jim Jordan won't even honor a lawful subpoena? Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? There's no credibility on that side. Mr. Attorney General, you are serious. They are not. You are decent. They are not. You are fair. They are not.
There you go. Thank you. I thought that was an effective moment. I mean, it just really pointed out the hypocrisy and the absurdity of the entire thing.
Well, they're also polite to each other sometimes, and that seemed like something that really needed to be said, and to call Jordan out, because he's a hypocrite, among other things you can say about him. Two can certainly play this game, but the problem is that Trump and Jordan just seem to get away with things over and over again, and to disregard. And now when, let's say, someone does that regarding the congressional investigation, they're going to blow it up. They have this echo chamber, and they're going to put it out in the right-wing media, because this impeachment inquiry, I just don't think it's going to go anywhere. I mean, it was one thing, Mark, that they have these 2 special agents from the IRS, and they're testifying under oath. And you can say, well, that's really remarkable. And it is somewhat remarkable. But at the same time, they seem to have these whistleblower protections that it's not exactly like, someone's actually getting fired and now they don't have a job. It seems like they still have their jobs. And it seems like this guy, the Shapley, I think he said he's a lifelong Republican. I work with the IRS, I work with federal agents, and some of them are extremely good, and some of them are very, very opinionated. And the Shapley may be one, and I think a lot of them don't like it when the case that they want to have prosecuted isn't prosecuted. He may just be one of those, disgruntled people with an axe to grind because the prosecutors use their discretion. I think the one interesting thing that did come out is that apparently when this felony prosecution for tax evasion of not reporting and paying tax on over $1 million, that was allowed to run. The statute of limitations was allowed to run. I think that's the 2014 and the 2015 tax years. And what came out at the hearing was that supposedly the lawyers for Hunter Biden were willing to toll the statute of limitations. They were willing to say, you know what, think about it for another couple of months or years. And even though they were willing to toll it, Weiss let the statute run. That does hit me as unusual. And the other thing is that they claim, both of them under oath, that they did not get participation from my old office, the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Central District of California here in Los Angeles. And I think it should be explained what participation they wanted and what wasn't given. And then the last one is that supposedly they conferred with the president's son's lawyers before they searched some warehouse. That came out at the hearing too. It is unusual, obviously, to let the target of a search know that the person's about to be searched. That is against federal criminal search warrants 101. However, there may have been some issue of decoupling. There might have been some presidential records that were there. They might have had to place under surveillance so they'd have a very good idea, right, if people were moving stuff. So they weren't worried about someone moving or destroying the evidence because the type of evidence it was. It's not inconceivable there would be some reason to let a target's attorney know that you were thinking of searching the target's premises. But those are the three things that hit me as a little unusual. Do I think it's a basis to impeach and remove the president of the United States, Biden? No, I do not. That's theater. That's theater, my friend.
Yeah, it seems like we're in the world of political theater now in such a big way. David, you've been so generous with your time. Thank you for being with us always. And we look forward to our next visit next week. Thank you, David Katz.
Thursday. Hi, yes. Kim.
Hi, Kim. Kim, hi-bye to David.
Bye, Mark. David Katz. Be with you.
All right. Thanks so much. Yeah, David Katz, everybody. Yeah.
The Mark Thompson Show.
That was a great visit with David. We kind of just let it run because he's so good. Yeah. Wow. Yeah, I think Randy is right when he says Katz is no apparent bias, no BS. He's very strong that way. Yeah.
Yeah.
As opposed to me with a lot of BS and bias. That's I try to balance it out with guests who are not as biased and BS'd as myself.
You know
shout out.
I'm kind of a big deal.
I am a big deal. I do balance it out that way too. How about a big shout out?
Big shout out.
Bill Deutsch.
Oh, Bill.
With 10 euros. Wow, I love a euro. Come on. I know it's a euro.
What?
How much is a euro?
International show. That's
yes,
great.
Albert, could you see?
Google it.
How much is a euro now? He's watching from Europe. I want to know how much
about
a euro
$10.
is.
It's about the same. Yeah.
Okay, so it's almost on par with the dollar? Okay.
Exactly. Yeah.
What the hell is going on in the United States of America?
They're asking that from Europe. Thank you, Bill.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody who has made a contribution today, kind of kept us going. But thanks everybody who's participated at all. It's been really cool. We've had a pretty good crew. I was trying to see if there's. Yeah, go ahead.
I put together this newscast that I thought we might get to, but we didn't. So is it okay if I just give you the one story that I was going to end with, a little upbeat moment?
Well, yes, of course. And I can even have time for a news capsule. I have no problem ending the show that way. I do want to quickly acknowledge one of my fans, please, Kim, if I could. If you wouldn't mind, Kim.
Right.
I'd like to acknowledge Scott Rittenberg. Come on, Scott Rittenberg. Yeah.
Don't encourage him, Scott.
Shout out. The day after tomorrow, it was asked, Mark, are you in the day after tomorrow? I said I was in a pivotal sequence in the day after tomorrow. I wasn't just in it. I was it. And Scott Rittenberg, indeed, with a $20 super chat, says, Mark is in the most important part of that movie. Wow.
Big shout out.
Yes.
Now you've done it, Scott.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I really do.
This thing is ready to pop, people.
Yeah, I am ready to pop. I'm ready to pop with my popularity in the Rittenberg household. So thank you. Yes. All right. Kim's going to do a news capsule, and then we'll wrap up around here with the last-minute shout-outs and our last-minute embracing. It's going to be like leaving high school for college when we drop you off at the end of this show. But right now, Kim's news, and we continue.
The Mark Thompson Show.
On the Mark Thompson Show, I'm Kim McAllister. Another report now that former President Donald Trump is disgusted with wounded veterans. There's a new profile of Joint Chiefs of Staff Chairman Mark Milley that has another look into the former president's attitude. There was an article published by The Atlantic saying Trump didn't want wounded veterans at official events because he said no one wants to see that. This all stemmed from an incident where Milley selected an Army captain who'd been injured to sing God Bless America at a welcome ceremony. Well, this man, Luis Avila, who served 5 combat tours in Afghanistan and was almost completely paralyzed because of the detonation of an IED, was chosen to sing. Apparently, the ground was soft that day. It had rained and his wheelchair almost fell over. When that happened, Vice President Mike Pence and Milley's wife ran over to help. But after the performance, apparently in earshot of several people, Trump said, "Why do you bring people like that here? No one wants to see that. The wounded. Never let Avila appear in public again."
Oh
So
my God.
now outrage over that. Yeah. House Speaker Kevin McCarthy says some members of the GOP just want to burn the place down instead of reaching an agreement to avoid a government shutdown. McCarthy and the most conservative House Republicans still at odds over legislation to fund the government beyond the September 30th deadline. Now a bipartisan group of House lawmakers is introducing a plan that would fund the government through January, so we'll see how that goes. Police confirm 1 person is dead and more than 40 are hurt after a charter bus carrying a high school marching band crashed in New York today. This large bus carrying the Farmingdale High School marching band from Long Island rolled down a highway about 70 miles north of New York City. At least 50 people on board this bus. This ongoing fight over a Florida congressional redistricting plan may end up making its way to federal court next week. A 3-judge panel in Tallahassee is scheduled to take up arguments in the second case filed by voting rights groups. The organizations like the NAACP claim the map approved by the legislature last year is radically discriminatory and unconstitutional as well. A deal between writers and producers could be finalized today. The Writers Guild of America met face-to-face with producers yesterday. More than 11,000 WGA members have been on strike for more than 100 days, so we'll see if they are able to come up with some type of resolution. Also, do want to let you know, as we near the end of the show, the University of California is joining a nationwide effort to provide low-income high school students equal access to college courses. As part of the National Education Equity Lab, the university system will offer 2 4-college credit online classes at no cost to students at Title I high schools, which are schools with high numbers of low-income students. So the UC system joining Stanford in partnering with the National Education Equity Lab. And lastly, it is officially a crime to have silly string or shaving cream on a Halloween night in Beverly Hills. They don't want you there. This specifically for the under 21 crowd. The city council voting this week 5-0 to approve the measure which bans anyone 21 or younger from possessing those items in public on October 31st. It's an effort to curb late night vandalism and satisfy a request that Beverly Hills police have wanted for years. Possession of toilet paper and eggs, still allowed. Silly string and shaving cream, it's a no-go. Yeah.
Man, it's all there, I think. I don't know.
It's all there, black and white, clear as crystal.
Well, somebody who's loaded up with all that stuff is going to be doing, nothing good with it, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
I'm Kim McAllister. This is The Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Yeah. Well, it is with the greatest reluctance that I must say goodbye, but before I do, I want a huge shout-out to Luis.
Big shout-out.
The day after tomorrow would have been a disaster without Mark's Academy Award-worthy theatrical contribution. Come on, Luis. It's too good. Thank you. Also, I saw Pinky in there somewhere with a the $1 a day that Pinky talks about.
Big shout out.
Yeah, big shout out, too. There you are, Pinky, super sticker. Thank you, everybody who supports this show all the ways you do, but just being here is a really great way to support it, and thank you. Wes, it's 10 euros, $10.66, Albert. Wes says, big shout out to Wes.
Big shout out.
A regular supporter, Wes is, and it's a great, great thrill to have him in the mix always. The After Party Live is now.
All right, and we'll do it live.
It's next on the
I'm
After Party Live
Stevens
station.
for the Mark Thompson Show.
No.
Bye-bye.
Kim and John await you.
Out of time.
Tomorrow
Bye.
it's Florida. It's politics. It's everything. Until then, bye-bye.